Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of The Formula, where we break down and explore the elements of achievement in world-class performers. We do that through discussing their experiences, routines, habits, and failures that really have helped them to become the person that they are today. My name is Trevor Carlson, and I will be your host today. So I want to say, first of all, welcome everyone to 2018. This will be the first episode that we release this year. And I'm going to be trying a little bit of a different style this episode, and you're going to see this in a few other episodes that come out this year, where I bring in two guests that probably have never met or don't know each other, and having them sit down and really riff on one specific topic. The two guys that I recruited for this episode are Peter Awad and Tommy Breedlove. If you remember, Peter was a previous guest, one of the earlier ones, while we were still working out how to turn this thing into a quality podcast. So Peter Awad is the founder of Mission Meats and a traveler extraordinaire. He's been a friend of mine and mentor for a few years now, and really brings a lot of good insight from several different perspectives. If you remember Tommy as well, he was a previous guest on the show. Tommy is the founder of Choose Goodness, and he was introduced via Dara Brewstein from Atlanta. So Tommy is just an awesome guy with a lot of experience in the financial field, and he has a interesting way of approaching things that I feel is very refreshing and helps me to kind of take a step back and check myself when it comes to how I'm approaching my day-to-day interactions or how I'm treating people or even treating myself. So the purpose of this episode with these two guys is to discuss living with intention. We discuss how to be proactive in your life, how to create your own values, your value system, and how to stick to them. I really enjoyed talking with these two guys. We really dive in deep on a few different subjects that I feel like are important, especially when you're planning out your year at the beginning of 2018. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. So without further ado, or making this introduction last any longer than it needs to, let's get this show started with Peter Awad and Tommy Breedlove. So on this episode of The Formula, I have Peter and Tommy. Guys, I want to say thanks for taking the time to show up and have a quick discussion with me today. The topic we're going to start off with is living with intention. Peter, do you want to go ahead and tell me what living with intention means to you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a loaded statement for me because there's all these different aspects of your life that you can be more intentional with. One of the ways I like to think about it is, you can have a mission statement, right? Another thing that you could do that's maybe a little bit more pragmatic, if that's the right word, is just to simply paying attention to what's going on around you. And what I mean by that is, like, you've got a lot of folks, myself included sometimes, where you can complain about what life has thrown at you. You can complain about the cards that have been dealt. You can worry and be concerned about how things are going in your life, or you can actually stop, pause, reflect, journal, and take action, right? You can think about some of the stuff that's been happening. I like to talk about, and my wife and I just did this recently, where we wrote down, like, what's good and what's not. And it could be in this last week, month, quarter, year, however you want, like anything that comes to mind, like what's good, what's not. And you've got this category, these two categories, and you're just like, just brain dumping on paper. And then going through each one of those and trying to figure out, like, why this is good, what makes this thing good, and how I can have more of it. And then conversely, like, what's bad, what makes it bad, and how I can have less of it. And some of the stuff you can't take action on, Some of the stuff may be out of your control, but a lot of it is. And I think just that mode of stopping, pausing, like getting out of, like, this grind and this daily routine, right? And really, like, thinking about what are those things that are good and not, and taking action on those things. Let's get some more of the good. Let's get less of the bad. And that's just being more intentional about your life. instead of feeling like this is just how life is, this is the mode of life that I'm at, this is the chapter of life that I'm in, and this is just kind of how it is. I think that's, there's a lot of BS there. There's a lot of stuff that's in there that's actionable. There are a lot of things that you can pivot or tack on and make changes on instead of just, living that life that's day to day.
That's good stuff, man. I love everything that Peter just said. To me, living with intentionality is being able to make clear, courageous, and what I'll call conscious choices. I think Peter made a great point. And when I say conscious, I mean that choices in the present moment, that you're being proactive with your life, your intentions, your choices, and not reactive. I think he said it best when so many people get caught up in the noise and what's not good enough. And what I heard is people are living their story and not their lives. And so what's great about living with intention, whether it's your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, living in a space of abundance / worthiness / gratitude as opposed from a place of scarcity and judgment and fear. And so if you, to me, living an intentional lifestyle is serving yourself first, is making sure that your machine is running optimal, that you are in a place to where you're working on your thoughts, your emotions, and being the best person that you can be, and living from your value system. I think that's so important. I think a lot of us struggle from what other people thinks and the shoulds or should nots of the world. And so as long as you're living from your truth, your value systems, and you're making choices, even from small ones to very massive ones, that are coming from a place of your value sets and not others, I think that's how you begin to live with intention.
Dude, love that, Tommy. Can I comment real quick on the living in your value system statement?
Go for it, brother. All
right. So because I don't want to glaze over this. I think this is really super important. I think that a lot of folks, they live in this constant state of indecision, right? They're like, oh, this new opportunity came to be. Hey, Tommy, I got this new opportunity, and it's in this other field, and it's like totally, and you see it, and you think like, I don't understand, why is this an opportunity? Like, doesn't this go against a lot of either your value system, or does it go against some of the goals that you have, etc. Right? But for them, it's like this is an opportunity to maybe fill one of those buckets. Maybe it's monetary, maybe it's something else, and so the idea of living in your value system to me is so critically important, because then if you have that and it's very detailed and it's very specific, then you can make easier choices, particularly saying no to certain things versus being in the state of indecision, not sure whether you say yes or no to this new opportunity, knowing whether you can say yes or no to this new shiny object. It makes those no's very easy. It makes the yeses very definitive if you know what that value system is. And so I think that it's not something that you want to glaze over. It's like living within your value system is very important. I think some people don't know what their values are.
They haven't had
they're not even clearly defined.
I was just going to say that. So how do you define those values?
Oh, that's is that question for me?
It's for whoever wants to answer it. If you want,
I love it, man. I love it. So, it's so critical these days, and we hear these words that are passed around a lot. Living with purpose, or living with intention, or living your highest truth, or your value systems. And part of what I help, so a lot of the work that I do is around these. It's usually men, and it's usually successful, ambitious guys. They've found financial success. They've usually, they've either started company or run companies, and they've done, they've lived the quote American dream, but they feel unfulfilled. They feel like they've lost meaning. They feel like they're not happy. They're not making those choices. So some of the work that we do goes around, what is your purpose? How do you find what you stand for, what you believe in, and what legacy you want to leave? And I think it starts, there's a lot of different techniques to do it, is, what fulfills you in life? What are you passionate about? What causes would you fight for? A flip side of it, and this is going to sound negative, but it's not negative at all. If you really think about the things in life that really piss you off, the flip side of that is where your value systems. There's a reason that either bullying or racism or whatever it might be that really upsets you. If you can turn that around and say, okay, why does this upset me so bad? Or why does this particular point of view upset me so bad? If you can flip that and turn it back within and go really deep on, why I would fight for that cause, that is a good place to start from your value systems, and your family also, right? I mean, if you really truly care about your family and yourself and your happiness, then why are you not investing there? And so it's really important that you take a deep dive into who you are, what you stand for, and what fulfills you in life. I think that's a really good place to start. Truthfully, though, it's not an easy process, in my opinion, because sometimes we can get it done in a day. Sometimes it takes 6 months, and it takes a lot of internal introspection from their part. And even if you're a company, what does your company stand for? I mean, what legacy, what pain are you solving, and why is your why so important? So that's some of my initial thoughts, but I'd love to hear what you guys think as well.
One other thing I want to throw in there, I think that identifying your value system, sometimes some parts of it could be a little bit easier than others. One of these things I think I shared when I was on here last, Trevor, is some ideas of the idea of negative visualization. And thinking about like the things that you hold dearest to you, that you take for granted on a regular basis, that if they were taken away would be just catastrophic to your life, right? And for me, it's very simple. It's like if I think of one of my kids getting extremely sick or even worse, or my parents or my siblings or any of these things that or my own physical mobility taken away, like my health, those are things that I start to identify. Like, oh, those are the things on a regular basis are very easy to overlook and take for granted. Like I can take it for granted that I can see out of my 2 eyes and walk on my 2 legs, right? I can take it for granted that my kids are all healthy and my wife is healthy, right? But those things, if any of them were taken away, they would be catastrophic to my life. They would, like, everything else would come to a halt. And so when I think about those things, then I can keep them top of mind and understand, like, those are my true, like, top values. Those are the things that I value most in life, right? And then working from there and understanding that then, you can think about the why of your business, as Tommy talked about, and all these other things that you really, really stand for, and keeping those top of mind, keeping those as a priority in your life.
One thing that keeps Trevor and Peter, when I was listening to Peter talk there, I love what you just said, and I think the most powerful practice in my life, and I wake up with it and I go to bed with it, is gratitude. Gratitude for everything that you do have, for your health, the fact that your heart is beating, the fact that your lungs work, that you can stand on your 2 feet, that your kids are healthy, and all the things that you do have. That practice alone has really impacted my life in such an amazing way. And I think we take a lot of things for granted, and we get caught up in the minutiae and noise and the next best thing or the next deadline or whatever we're working on as ambitious people. And we forget to smell the roses, which is a little cliche, but it's so true. So I'm hearing what I took out of that is gratitude for what you do have.
It's there. I mean, no matter what, well, I shouldn't say no matter what. Most situations that you're in, you can always find something that's bad or you don't like about it. Or you can find something, or you can choose to focus on like what's good, right? Like what you can be grateful for. Like someone asked me the other day, like, how are you always in like a good mood? I'm like, well, I woke up today, I'm healthy, I'm here, I'm in one piece. I don't know. What else is there? What else am I mean, nothing is going wrong. So it's like, you can choose to look at like, well, like I think one morning I had like a flat tire, and then I decided to walk and get my coffee. I didn't bring my hat, and it was like 0 degrees out, and I had to stand outside for like 15 minutes waiting for the traffic to stop. And I didn't even think about it until this conversation got brought up. But I could have been like, man, I can't believe all these things happened. My day is so bad. But I got in the office and I was just like chipper and in like a great mood. I was a little cold, but it's like taking the time to just like, it's like I feel like Tim Ferriss or somebody has like an exercise that you go through where it's like, what am I grateful for? Well, I still have, like, if nothing else, I still have both of my, like, I still have 2 feet, 2 hands. Like, you just keep going back until it's like, well, I'm not sick, or I'm healthy, or my family's healthy, until you just keep withdrawing from whatever's going on around you until you find something that's like you have that somebody else may not, and you're like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. That's a good thing. Do you guys have any practices like that or anything that you use to really look for gratitude or things to be grateful for in your life?
I do it. So for me, I do a gratitude session every morning and every night. And I also, with my wife, we do a gratitude session quite often. And also, life, whether we like it or not, life is going to kick you in the face sometimes. And it can be extreme things it can just be really, really tough, extreme things, even losses of life of people that you care about. And one of the things that, depending on who you surround yourself with, your inner circle, your friends, your family, the people that you trust and who have your best interest, is sometimes even all this work that we do as humans or as men and all the self-work is sometimes it can just get overwhelming. And having people in your life that can help you see the light, see all the great things that you have when you get in that space. I call it, and Trevor, you and I talked about this earlier, I call it the Tommy go round when I get in my own head. And you can ask yourself, one of the things I also do, and then I'll turn it over to Peter, is something that's been very powerful for me, and I forgot where I learned it, is especially when life gets tough or something big happens, is why is this happening for me? What am I supposed to learn from this? Am I supposed to, where can I take this from a positive, worthiness, abundance mindset to how is this helping me? Why is this happening in my life? Why is this happening for me as opposed to why is it happening to me? And that's been very powerful for me as well.
I love that, Tommy. Dude, and the thing is like what you just said is all about your perspective and the perspective and the stance that you choose to take on what's happening in your life. And sure, there are very small things, right? You have flat tire example, all the way up to deaths and family, right? And some of those are a lot easier to bounce back from or have that perspective on than others, right? And some of them really you've got to maybe just slog through until you have recovered from it. Like my mother-in-law passed away almost 5 years ago, and that was a really, really dark time in our family's life. But we were able to work through that, right? The majority of things that are happening in our lives, though, are not necessarily that drastic, right? And so that perspective of for me versus to me is extremely powerful. And I think that there's so many different ways that you can take that, right? And the majority of the time, especially when it comes to stuff that's happening in your business life, there's almost always something to learn from it, right? And so I've gotten in the habit a lot better recently than in the past, where the first question that comes out of my mind, comes to mind once something happens is, what are we going to learn from this? Like what could we possibly learn from the situation? And there's almost always not even just one, but several learnings. Like, oh, we've got a breach in our protocol here. Like we've just been really, really loose on this aspect of the business, just thinking that it was going to go great forever. And clearly it doesn't. So we need to have some kind of system for this, some kind of check and balance in this area of our business. And so there's always something really, really incredible to learn from those scenarios. The other side of it is, and it just happened today, like we had something fairly substantial happen in one of our businesses where it required some effort on our part in a capacity that we normally don't serve, right? And not saying it's beneath us, it's something we don't normally need to handle, had to handle it today. And so my co-founder, Nick, and I are talking, and I'm kind of going through, just kind of complaining about what I had to do today. And then I ended it with, wah, right? like acknowledging, like, I know, I'm complaining and I shouldn't, and my life's really freaking good, wah, right? And then it was able, like, we both got to laugh. And then we're like, okay, here's the stuff that we've learned from what we had to go through today, and here are the actions we're going to take. We put it behind us now. Let's move forward, right? And that to me, it was like I could have not ended that conversation with that stupid noise, right? But it just changed. To me, it changed the positioning entirely to like, I know I'm complaining, right? This is not that big a deal. It's over now. Here's what we learned. Let's go, right? And that maybe won't work for everybody, but I think that's just kind of like one stupid example of how you can change your positioning on something, change your perspective, and turn a negative into a neutral and negative into a positive.
I have something very, very similar, and I love that wah. I love that. I was like, yeah, I totally get that. Because what I'll do is I realize that I'm complaining about the most ridiculous small stuff, and I'm like, these are really first world problems, aren't they? And they're like, oh, yeah. These are major first world problems. Like even a flat tire, the fact that you have a car, to give you a flat tire, put you ahead of so many members of societies. You know what I'm saying? Is we have our basic needs met in this wonderful country that we live in. We have roofs over our head. Most of us have roofs over our heads. We can feed ourselves, and we can have that car to have that flat tire. And if you step back and you're like, I really have been very fortunate to be here, and we always laugh. Yeah, these are not real problems, because there's so much of society that has a struggle every day, right? And I love it. I think all of this, man, is the choice of mindset. Is we all know that the one thing we do know, some people say that the certainty in life is death and taxes. I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with the whole tax thing, but yes, we are going to all die. And that's not being morbid, is how many spins around this sun do we have? And are we going to choose to try to work very hard at being happy and abundant mindset and just try to make the world and ourselves a better place? And it really is a simple choice that so many of us, and I'll say us, because my first 36 years on this earth is I wasn't choosing to serve myself and others. I was a taker. I was living in a fear-based, I'm not good enough nonsense. And I was like, enough is enough. I'm going to choose to be a better human, choose to be a better man, and also choose to be happy. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. So I really think it is the power of choice, and how do we choose to make a difference in this life.
No doubt.
Peter, I'm glad that you kind of reapplied that mindset or that approach to business, because that was going to be my next question for you guys. Was, we're talking about living with intention, and we've talked a lot about it personally, but from a business perspective, if we could go a little bit further on that, maybe Tom, if you want to take this one, but what does living with intention in your professional life mean to you?
To me, and this is my opinion, and I would love to get you guys' perspective on that. To me, it's one stew. So whether it's personal or professional, and I think the people on this phone, I think we're more entrepreneurial. I think we own our own businesses. And I also sit on a lot of boards, both for-profit and not-for-profit. And I think, first of all, we have to serve ourselves as human beings and constantly be sharpening that pencil to be better people, to be better leaders, to be better, and just constantly seek growth. And so I think it starts there. But I think also from a company standpoint is really building, and this is not, I honestly believe this, is you have to stand for something. I think Simon Sinek calls it your why, and really figuring out what is the community we are serving as a business, what pain are we solving, and what do we want to stand for, and what are our values as a company. And we can never, ever, no matter what, and I think Peter said it best, is we cannot compromise that to chase the next shiny toy or to compromise our dignity and values for $1. And so many of us get caught in that competitive, let's build $1 billion company nonsense instead of building a great company that serves yourselves and humanity. And so I think it's critical, but I do think it's a holistic thing, especially for us as business owners. You can't separate the human from the business. And we always talk, I hear, I've been involved with some very, very large companies in my life, especially back when I was at my Deloitte days, is they like to use all these ridiculous acronyms, B2B, B2C, and all blah, 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 blah. It's still human to human, man. And if you're not serving your employees, if you're not being the best leader or setting the culture, and you don't know what you stand for as a company or professionally, you're going to be lost. And the people who do figure it out, and what's amazing, and this is, I'm a financial guy, so the data says that if people believe in who you are and what you do, they're more likely to pay somewhere between 25 to 40% more for your product because they believe in what you're doing. And so that's real tangible financial results of just by knowing who you are and what you stand for and not compromising that no matter what. And we're going to make mistakes, right? We got to lighten up. We're human. And businesses are run by humans. So even when we make mistakes, get transparent about it, own it, but then, work to be better than you were yesterday. So I think it's a holistic thing, but I think you really do need to figure out both as a human and a company what you stand for and who you serve and all that. So that's my opinion.
One big stew. I like that. Tommy. And I agree. I don't think there's work-life balance. I don't think there's work and then it's just life, right? We're living. We live at work. We live at home. We're living, right? No matter where we're at. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, I'm reading right now, which is funny you brought it up. And the quote I texted somebody today was, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that we forget that. Like we talk about what we're doing, we talk about the features of our product or our service, but we don't talk about the why enough, right? We feel like that's too fluffy, that's too woo-woo, right? But people want to know why you're doing what you're doing. They want to know what you stand for. I mean, Mission Meats, our snack food company is all about our mission, right? And after reading that today, I'm like, we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job on communicating that why. Like, why do we exist? Why did this company start? Why are we busting our ass to put out a clean product? It's cool to have a clean product, but how about the fact of all the people that we are supporting and all the organizations that we're partnering with and the boards that we're sitting on? Like, those things are more compelling, right? That's a more compelling story than a new flavor that we put out, in my opinion. So it's all one big stew, in fact.
And to take that a step, it's so interesting. I think, as entrepreneurs and business leaders, sometimes we get so caught up in operations or finance or systems or, oh my God, I got to make payroll, that we start forgetting why we did it to begin with. Like you said, Mission Meats, why, who are we serving and why are we doing this? And if we can always remember to go back to that and not compromise that and really hold ourselves accountable to our own culture, our own values, our own, and not compromise. And when we make mistakes, own it. I think it's super important. But I think everything Peter said is spot on.
I'm just digesting all this right now because I'm thinking about how important it is to really do a lot of people understand why they do things when they start doing them? I mean,
do you want me to give you a good example, Trevor, of a company that's lost itself? And I hope if they listen to this, I'll probably get a big legal letter. Let me tell you a company that start for all the right reasons, and through the pressures from the marketplace, the pressures from Wall Street, and candidly some greed, they've really lost themselves. And Sam Walden started Walmart to give affordable American-made products to the blue collar America, to really be a marketplace, to give the best quality products at the best prices and not compromise that. And in his lifetime, it exploded into this wonderful family-based. He was a very humble guy. He was a very considerate guy. And somewhere along the way, not only did they lose their why, they went the other way. And their business practices, there's a lot of things they have done and choices they have made subsequent to that. And yes, it became one of the largest, if not still the largest company. I don't think they're the largest anymore, but they were within the past 5 years, the largest company in America. But you're now starting to see even these giant, even these empire, huge companies, if they start forgetting what they started the business for, and even the companies in Good to Great. I mean, Jim Collins wrote this book called Good to Great, and he listed all these great companies. Guess what? Probably half of them are out of business now. And some of it's marketplace driven, but it's more about losing what for the almighty dollar or shareholder value, or to compromising no longer supplying the quality products or taking care of our employees just so 5 or 6 or 7 people can make an extra billion. That's where we start. They compromised what the company was built on and what they stood for. And there's a prime example of a company who lost its meaning, its value systems, and its integrity. And candidly, they're paying the price for it. I hope they don't listen.
Yeah,
I'm notorious about suing, folks.
I totally agree with you, man.
That's an interesting example because I remember I read his Sam Walton's autobiography a long time ago, and I remember reading it and taking tons of notes and thinking wow, this guy there was just a few different situations where he had the opportunities to either fire folks or do other things or close stores, and he chose not to. He chose to the folks he was going to fire, he took them and put them in one of his highest performing stores for 3 to 6 months, and then he took them and put them back in the store that they were at before, and they became some of his best people at their old store. And it's I don't necessarily see a lot of companies that are able to do that right now, or that are doing that right now. I mean, if I heard a story like that, I'd probably be really? That actually happened? It's surprising. But I think people tend to forget that even though business has now become more automated and there's a lot more technology involved, it's all still about people. I mean, you have the customers, their people, they have their reasons for buying things, and then you have the people that work for you, they have their reasons for doing what they're doing. So it's remembering that that's what it's all about, is the people.
And it's pretty remarkable, even to this day, because of my background. I get calls from companies who want me to come in and help them fix something. Our customers are leaving, sales are down, our operations aren't efficient, blah, blah, blah. And 9 out of 10 times, it's never about those things, although we can always continually sharpen the pencil on our business practices and, the tactical day-to-day operational stuff. But it usually all goes back to leadership and culture, and not really losing ourselves as a company, as leaders, and what we stand for, because ultimately we have responsibilities to take care of ourselves and our people. And if we can do that, as long as our product is still viable and we can compete in the marketplace, but if we can turn it back in and take care of ourselves and our people, the rest will just take care of itself. And so many companies set these profitability or revenue growth goals, and I think that's just backwards. I think you've got to set, your strategy and what value you're bringing to the marketplace, and what value and pain are you solving, not only internally with your people and who you are, but also what we're doing externally. And I think if you do those things and you don't compromise those things, that the profitability and revenue growth will be a result of actually doing the right things and having your people and customers believe in you. I 100% believe that's the case.
Yeah. Profit would come, right, if you're following those beliefs. So, Tommy, I got a question for you, man. What do you do? Somebody discovers after going through an exercise that they have their current situation, right, whether it's their employment situation or their business situation, if they're a founder, owner, entrepreneur, is not in line with their value system that they finally have sat down and determined. What do you do, man?
Oh, that's a really good question. So on the employee side, when you're an employee of a company, is first of all, you have to ask yourself, can I influence current leadership, the current company or current culture? Can I help influence them? Is our value system, is the difference unreconcilable, or is it not? And the reason I left the world of large public accounting and financial consulting firms is, Peter, you don't know this, I actually was elected to the board of directors of this large firm in the Southeast at 39. And within my first board meeting, and I was making a lot of money, had the title. I mean, I was at the table, brother, at a very young age. But I knew that the what they considered important and what they stood for. It's not that they're bad people. It was just very different than what I stood for at that time. And I knew those differences were unreconcilable. So I didn't just drop at the mic and walk out and leave my family. I didn't want to move us under a bridge. But what I did do is I made the difference that I can. I lived my truth, and that affected, the employees and the members of the firm and my partners at the time in the best way that I could. And I would not compromise who I was while I stayed there. But externally, I'd hired life coaches, got my mastermind group together, my mentors, my friends, my family, and say, okay, where can I take my God-given talents, my value systems, and where can I make the biggest impact on myself and someone else? So what I would encourage those particular individuals to do is, A, figure out if those differences are unreconcilable. And if they are, you've got to move on. But if they are reconcilable, or if it's just a few tweaks here and there, is what can you add to give back to them to help, bridge those gaps, or what value can you bring internally to maybe, bring them more aligned in what you're trying to do. So it really is, you have to do some self-assessments of yourself, self-assessments of where you are and where you want to go. As a company, it's up to, if you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling with the value systems of the company that you brought in, I don't know how that would happen, except you got to look in the mirror and you've done it. So there's something in there that you've either taken an investment group, or you've pivoted or shifted into something that you didn't believe in. And so you've got to kind of look in the mirror and own that, be accountable to it, be transparent with it. And hopefully it's not something that you've done that can't be undone. For example, if you've taken a huge amount of venture capital money and now they own 51%, you've laid that bed and you have to be responsible for that. So again, it goes back to, what can you do? Own whatever whatever you did to make your company lose its why, its meaning, its value systems, how can we say, okay, I messed that up, own it as a leader, be transparent about it, ask for your people, your investors, your partners, your co-founders, whatever it might be, to help you overcome that and say, this is where we're going to get back to where we are. And if you have kind of gotten rid of your company, or the other opportunity is you got to sell your shares and move on and start something that you do believe in. So it's a really hard choice, but you've got to do some internal, you got to have internal perspective and external. But I really do believe you've got to follow your meaning and purpose in life. Otherwise, you're not going to be fulfilled. And so I feel like I've talked too much, but I hope I answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to steal the seat from you, Trevor.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just enjoying the show, man.
Nice.
So I have a specific scenario I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Peter, someone you and I both know decently well. I'm not going to name any names, but they have this saying that I hear them say after they've done something that I would consider to be like maybe being a bit of a dick. They're like, well, you can't get ahead of business by being a nice guy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, well, so I don't know who this is. I can't wait to find out. So here's the thing. Here's my opinion on it, dude. I think that you can be stern and kind. And it's interesting you're asking me this question, man, because I just had a strong talk with my 8-year-old son just about 2 hours ago about this very specific topic. And it's all about how you communicate in order to get the results that you want, right? But to keep your reputation up, right? And it's not a reputation and an ego sort of thing. It's a reputation that, you, whoever your name is a person that gets it done and that can steer the ship, and that can drive initiatives forward, but in a way that's inclusive of the folks that you're interacting with, both internally inside your company as employees and contractors, and externally, right? And if you've got some producers or vendors, et cetera, that you are stern yet fair, right? And the example that I used today was that, the issue that we had today that I mentioned earlier was not of our doing. It was someone that we work with that just royally screwed up. And the conversation went in a stern fashion, but it was very kind and respectful in order to find a solution for the issue that arose. But it wasn't in a way where I was going to burn a bridge. It wasn't in a way where I was talking down. It was in a problem-solving sort of way where that person would understand that they messed up, and they admitted to that, and they found a way to make it right. Now, in the example that I used with my son, I could have very easily been a jerk. I could have been an asshole easily, and rightfully so. But to me, it's all about getting the results, but in a way that's kind and in a way that's calm. And so, because I think that if I had that conversation with this person and it was in a dickish sort of way, I may have had the same results, but unlikely. To me, it's unlikely because you don't think clearly when you're using all these emotions, and you don't think clearly when you're talking down to somebody and you're putting them in a defensive position. So, dude, I absolutely disagree from two different standpoints. One is it's less productive if you're a robot and you only care about efficiency and productivity. It is less productive to operate in that manner. And second of all, it's just not a good way to operate. And you become the type of person that has this reputation, as I had with my son, this conversation with my son, and explained to him. You become this person with a reputation that gets around, right? You're like, dude, don't work with Peter, right? He's an asshole, right? So if I'm an asshole to my graphic designer, he tells all the other graphic designers in our circle that I'm an asshole. They're not going to want to work with me either. So I just don't see any reason why you should be. What did you say? Dickish? There's no reason to be dickish. I don't even understand that statement.
I would love to know what he means by being a nice guy. I don't know this particular person, but the words that what's coming up for me is boundaries. It's forceful compassion. I mean, you can still, set boundaries in your business as a leader, as a human, as a man, as a woman, and you can be, when it's time that someone screws up and or you screw up, to hold them or yourself accountable to it and be transparent with it. But to say that you've got to be a dick or a jerk or whatever word we want to use in order to do business, that's a lie. And let me tell you, whoever this individual is, people never forget how you treat them and how you make them feel. They just don't forget it. And let me speak directly to whoever this human being is. I was that guy. I was the asshole boss, the ye who turns the lights off last win, and I was the Viking mentality, kill 'em all, fraternity, locker room dude who was going to outwork you, out tough you, out cool you, out important you, and it made me crash not only in business, and people see right through the nonsense, and it made me crash in life, and I was just completely unfulfilled and unhappy in life. And that's how Choose Goodness and the Choose Goodness movement were born. And I would speak directly to this person is when I started living from my truth and my value systems and treating myself and others how I wanted to be treated, and came from a place of worthiness and happiness and compassion. What happened to me in business, what happened to me from a promotional standpoint, what happened to me financially, and what happened to me has just been 180 degrees different. And so what does nice mean? And let me be clear here too. If you're that person who is maybe not disclosing certain things with customers or vendors or partners or employees, you're holding people back, you're trying to get one over or something, that is unsustainable. It really is. And in your heart and mind if you're doing the right things. And I don't see why you can't choose to be a nice human being. And that doesn't mean niceness doesn't mean weakness. I mean, you can still be a really nice person and compassionate and empathetic, but also set boundaries with yourself and employees and customers. And so I'm with you guys. I think that statement, I think there's a lot of, and I'm just going to call him out because it's what I do for a living, I think there's a lot of fear and insecurity in that statement. And so I would question what nice is and why this particular person doesn't feel like they can be nice. And candidly, I think it's complete bullshit.
Yeah, totally agree, man. And not to cut you off, Trevor, real quick, you said people don't forget. Do you know the flip side of people don't forget, or the other side of people don't forget, is they don't forget when you could have been a jerk, right? You could have been a dick and you weren't, right? And Amen. So like this person today that we had to deal with, they're not going to forget, right? They expected a phone call, and they knew the phone call was coming. They knew what it was about. I'm sure they expected a phone call, from me anyways, that was kind. But from anyone else, they would have thought that, oh, my God, I'm going to get my ass reamed, right? And it didn't. It didn't go – like the conversation didn't go that way at all. It was very much on a problem-solving stake, right? Like, hey, or on a problem-solving path. We're going to go down this path. We're going to figure out what happened. We're going to figure out what the solutions are, and we're going to be done with it, right? There was no emotions in it whatsoever. And I guarantee you, when it comes down to a situation, this has happened before, where there's a favor to be had, right, where he's got a situation that he can hand a favor out to someone, whether it's me or someone else, they're going to think of they're more likely to think of the guy that or gal that treated them right and fair, versus the person that was, unkind to them. So I agree, man. I think that I would really love to know this person's definition of nice.
Nice. Yeah. I'd love to know that too. And it's so funny. I had this business partner and know other people. There's a gift. Sometimes you have to let people go. It's just not a fit for your organization, and chances are it hurts. I mean, business is personal, man. You're dealing with people's lives, and especially as an employer, and I've had to let 8 to 12 people go in my career, and it's a really tough thing. I hate doing it. They don't want to do it. It always works out better for that person and the organization and us in the long term, but it sucks in the moment. But I had these business partners, and I know some former clients that I don't know what gift they had, but when they let this person go, they almost felt better after than before the meeting. And that's a real talent. There's a real grace to it. There's a real art to it. And candidly, a lot of these great HR people and employers, they also help that person. They said, look, this is just, we're going to close this chapter in this particular situation for this business, but how can I help you move on in your career, move on with, what can I do to put the next steps in front of you to help you be successful in your next venture? And so they never forget that. And I'm telling you, there's been certain situations, and this is truth, that we had to let some people go. And we helped them, and we did it in a graceful manner, and kind of owned our part and their part, and why we didn't think it was a good fit. But they never forgot that. And I think what Peter said is so spot on. Those people became our best clients. They end up moving on to these other places and like large Japanese companies, and we get phone calls. Hey man, I want to switch all of my services over to your consulting practice, and it just pays dividends 1,000,000% when you do the right things and treat people the right way. So I would really question what his definition of nice is, and I guarantee you, and I want to harp on this, is there's a real insecurity and ego in that statement somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. A couple things from what you guys both said was, well, one, Tommy, I totally agree with you on the insecurity side of things. I think that's absolutely where it comes from. Another point you made was about, you know, helping people move on in their career and their journey. Peter, you and I have a good friend of ours that actually is exceptional at that. He's one of the only people that I've seen do it over and over again. That's Trace Steffen. And, like he had an intern last year or 6 months ago or something like that, and it was like, you know, the guy was trying really hard, but he wasn't, you know, Trace just really couldn't justify bringing him on to like a full-time position or even like a part-time position. But what he did was he reached out to his network. He kind of figured out where this guy could fit in, like where his strengths would allow him to excel. And he helped him get like a job interview. And now I think he's got a full-time job and he's doing really well. And I've seen Trace do that over and over again. I don't know if it's had any dividends for him, paid any dividends for him yet, but I imagine that sometime down the road, you know, it'll come back to help him out.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I mean, other than the fact that he knocked my tooth out, but we'll talk about that another time.
Oh, what a great story.
Yeah.
You got to share that sometime.
Yeah. I mean, I get to share it every day when I feel my my fake tooth. So, anyways, that's a story for another time. I'll tell you about that another time, Tommy. I didn't get punched or anything like that. It was an accident. It was an accident at the worst possible timing. So
worst possible time. Okay.
I love it.
So one thing I wanted to add to what you guys said of like the benefits of, I mean, I don't know, like there's a saying, it's like, you know, if you live a good life, you get to enjoy it in the moment, and you also get to enjoy it later when you think back on how you acted or how you behaved, right? Like, I think we can probably all think of something where we did something nice for someone, and in the moment you could tell how much it meant to them. And when you think back on it, you have, like, fond memories over it. Whereas you also have those, like, maybe you did something that wasn't living up to your value system. When you think back on that, you might not feel the best about it. So it's like, one, just don't be a jerk, because, you know, it's like that stuff will come back. Like, it'll, you know, once you realize that you were a jerk or didn't treat someone or act within your value system, you'll have to think about that. You have to remember it. And then two, it's like, I feel like it's very short-term thinking. Like, I'm going to be a jerk in this moment to try to get what I want right now, instead of thinking like long-term, long game, right? Like, if I'm just a jerk to everyone around me as things are going well, let's say things start going south and I need, you know, I could really use some friends. I could use a network. I could use some help. Do you think any of those people are going to have my back? They're going to do anything for me? Absolutely not. Like, there's going to be no one around to help, right? So I don't know. I agree with you guys. Don't be a jerk. Treat people well. And, you know, if nothing else comes out of it, at least you get to think back fondly on everything that you did.
And it's so important for me, man. This stuff that we're talking about right now is life or death for me. I felt like I spent 36 years, and Trevor, you and I talked about this. If there's this list of 100 things not to do in life, I think I've checked off like 91 of them. And it didn't pay dividends from my health, from my emotions. I was living life in all the wrong ways. And yes, I was somewhat successful, but it can only take you so far, and it's not sustainable. So for the past 7, and through the Choose Goodness movement and all the coaching and speaking that I do now, it's about getting on the right side of karma and treating people how I want to be treated, and how I want to treat others, and serving myself. And I think that if you look at these folks who are, I'm from the Southeast, so I can say folks, by the way. If you if you look at these people who are mistreating people, their chances are they're really mistreating themselves too, and they're judging themselves. And these masks that we have to wear, this tough guy mask, this cool guy mask, important guy mask, and you can put gal in there too. It's not gender specific. But it's all manifestations of not living your truth it's filled with all this other stuff. And so I would, if you're that person right now and you're feeling unfulfilled and unhappy and you live in a place of judgment, resentment, envy, fear, you're not alone, but really look within, and why do you feel like you need to be mean to other people? And so it will not serve you. It's not sustainable. And the last thing you want is looking back on your life with regret and being on your deathbed and thinking, why did I do all those things? And trust me, I know, man, I've lived it. And so that's why it's so important for me to put this message out into the world now, is that you're not alone, and there are tools, tips, and strategies to get you to living a happy, fulfilled life. And so that's my last comment to the niceness thing.
Well, and I've got one more, man. Let's belabor it just a little bit more. You could be on the other side of it, right? You could be interacting with those people, right? And you can choose one or two paths. You can choose to be like, that guy, gal, what an asshole, right? And be an asshole back, or just totally disregard them, right? Or you can choose to show them some kindness, right? You can choose some goodness, as Tommy says, and to show them some of that compassion, and maybe change the course for that person, right? And especially if it's somebody that you interact with on a regular basis, right? And I think that the dividends that are paid on that are also to put they're putting yourself in a different position, giving you some different energy and some different focus and some different positivity that then you can then reflect on, as Trevor was saying, right? And so an example for me is, I've got probably one of the most unhappy UPS drivers on the face of the planet that I interact with on a regular basis. I mean, this guy doesn't like delivering packages, and I always think to myself, like, dude, you're the UPS guy, like, this is what you do, right? Like, it's not even like it's not even like I'm not looking down at the guy. I'm like, your job is to deliver like, that's why you wake up, right? But the thing is, like, I've had plenty of opportunity to be like, dude, you're an asshole, right? But I don't. I'm kind to the guy. If I know he's delivering a ton of stuff to me, I'll go out and carry packages in with him. I've given him some free product, just like out of the blue. Like, we carried a bunch of stuff in. I was like, hey, man, you eat meat? Which is a hilarious question, because the majority of people do eat meat. But I don't want to piss off any vegetarians or vegans out there. And so he says, yes. And I give him some product. And you could tell the guy was floored, right? Like, because most people aren't nice to him because the guy is an extremely unkind dude, right? And so I think, like, that not only helps to shine a light on their day and then maybe question some of their angst, right? But then it makes me feel good, right? I feel good that I was nice to this person that I shouldn't have been nice to, probably, right? And so that's to me the other side of things, is like to spot those folks, to stop and pause and just show that you care, especially when they maybe don't deserve it.
That's beautiful, man, because and it's not easy to do what you just described. Sometimes it's easier to react and get down to where they are. And that's not saying we're above them or below them. And I totally love that. It's about being the light and also being empathetic, compassion, because who knows what that particular person could be going through. I mean, he could have sickness all over his family. He could be sick himself. I mean, there could be so much going on that he's lost the forest for the trees. And the fact that you gave him some meat, or that you're kind and help him carry packages, you're setting the example with compassion, empathy, and kindness. And why match darkness with darkness? Because it never, I mean, we see it in our politics, we see it in our socioeconomic system. When we try to match darkness with darkness, it never works. And so I love that. I think that was very beautifully and well said. And by the way, my UPS guy is the happiest guy on earth. We always have like these 20-minute conversations. And then I'm like, shit, I'm late for a meeting. just great conversations. I'm almost envious. Like, how many books could I listen to if I delivered packages? So I'm like, I'm envious of his position. I love my guy. So it's so interesting that we have two different guys.
Absolutely.
Man, I have so many thoughts on that and questions too. Let's see where I can start. So let's say you are in that position, Peter, where you are working with someone that's maybe your boss or the owner of the company or something like that, and you're kind of in a position where you're kind of on the receiving end of that type of situation. What advice do you have to that person? I mean, you kind of touched on it a bit, but let's say that instead of it being like a UPS driver, let's say it's your boss. What advice would you have for someone in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same advice, dude. So I think that a person like that is usually probably getting two different responses, right? It's either radio silence because whoever's on the receiving end of that's like, holy crap, I can't believe I have to deal with this every single day. I'm just going to suck it up and deal with it, but I'm not going to give anything back, right? Or they got the darkness with darkness, as Tommy just mentioned, right? They're probably getting some disgruntled replies back, right? And so you can be that light, as Tommy referenced, right? You can be the light in the workplace, but you can also be very candid, right? You could say, hey, this is what's going on in the office. A lot of people don't like the way that you communicate or whatever it is, X, Y, or Z that they're doing, and letting them know. And what's the worst that could happen is you lose your job and you get to leave that awful situation and hopefully find something better. But I think that you can be the standout, right? You can be that person that's like different. You can be the person that speaks up. You can be the person that shows some light. You can be the person that shows this person kindness when they don't deserve it. All the same types of things that, that I showed in the UPS driver example.
I'm hearing, yeah, I love that. The only thing I would maybe change, not that I would change, I might do it a little different because this has just been in my experience. I love that, certain behaviors are inappropriate and boundaries need to be set, even with superiors. And like you said, what's the worst thing that can happen? You lose your job. And it's very doubtful that that'll happen, but sometimes it does, right? And it'll be worth it. There's something noble if you lose your job for the right reasons. But the only thing that I would encourage, it can be a little tough to do, and it's a practice, is instead of using the word you, people get, when they hear the word you, they get really defensive, and it's about them and your judgment of them, right or wrong. It's a subconscious thing that we do as humans when people are trying to help us or to set up boundaries, and we use the word you. I found this in my marriage as well. If I say you're doing this, it never pays dividends for me in the long run, and I probably end up sleeping on the couch.
That doesn't work at your house?
So what I try to do, and I'm not always successful, and this is a practice, is and say, I feel this way, or how can I feel like you might be struggling with some few things, or I feel like you might be overwhelmed. You've got so much responsibilities. You've got so many things that you've got going on. How can I help you, or how can I get the company to help you be more? I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm just off the top of my head is make it about you. And when I say you, me and how I feel, and how can I, the light, help them be more successful in their job and more successful with the employees or the struggles that they're currently having in their position. And so that's the only thing that I would maybe pivot a little bit or change, because if you make it about them and I know better than you, chances are you're just going to get kicked in the face. So just maybe a slight shift of how you deal with it.
Yeah. Those are good words. And you probably asked the wrong guy or guys. I don't know. I haven't had an employer, I think, in 17 years. And so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, and it's been a minute for me too, but I have been employed. I was for a long time, but it's been a minute, it's been a minute. But I'm struggling, guys. I'm struggling with this right now, Let me just put it out there, be fully transparent with it. You're talking about a guy who's created a movement called Choose Goodness, and I've also do a lot of executive and individual coaching on meaning and balance and being a good human, right? But I am right now sitting in a cabin in nowhere, Georgia, and I've got neighbors around me that I'm struggling with, and I love them as humans. I'm empathetic toward them. I'm compassionate toward them, but I'm not drinking my own sauce. I feel like when I'm around them, I'm very quiet. I come from a place of judgment. I'm not coming from a place of empathy and compassion. And technically, I just want to write them off as friends and neighbors. I just don't want that kind of energy around me, and I don't want to get into the specifics. But I know something deep down inside of me, the reason I'm struggling with this is because I know, honestly, it's not the right thing. And why can't I just put myself in their shoes, see where they're coming from, although I don't agree with a lot of what's coming out of their mouths and what they stand for. But I'm not drinking my own sauce if I just choose to write them off and move on. And it's kind of like we were talking about earlier, Trevor, on a different podcast. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. But at a certain point, I gotta think about, I gotta drink my own sauce, and just because I have differing views from these particular people on certain things is am I ready and willing to give up that relationship, or what is my part in this, and what could I do better? So it's that whole balance and boundary thing. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys as well.
Yeah, and one quick comment on that, Tommy, is I think about frequently, especially of late, is like, is this person in my life for a reason, and am I totally screwing this up? Like, is this an opportunity for me to like speak some life into someone, right? Is it me for an opportunity for me to just be a good listener because I don't have anybody to listen to them, or to offer some feedback that can maybe change the trajectory of their life? Am I missing that? Am I missing the boat here? And there've been some opportunities recently where I haven't spoken up. I've been too busy, or I didn't feel like talking about the topic or something like that, or I couldn't think of a kind thing to say, so I didn't say anything, which sometimes is the right thing to do, right? And I'm like, man, I think I missed an opportunity there. Like that person was presented and they were put into my life in this specific moment, in this specific location for a reason, and I totally missed it. And so I think about that a lot, definitely as of late.
Man, I totally relate to that, and give you a recent experience is they threw a neighborhood Thanksgiving feast, and of course the conversation turned sideways, and I chose not to participate in it and get like deep down inside angry and judgmental, and that's completely against what I stand for. And I think you're absolutely right. I could have had an opportunity in a compassionate, graceful way to say, well, have you considered thinking about this particular situation that way? And I didn't speak up, and I think that's a great point. Is why is this person in my life, and what can I learn from that person, and what can I give to that person to maybe help them maybe consider different options? And I love that perspective, man. And so thank you. That really helped me out. So I'm taking a lot out of this. So thank you. That's really good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring it up in that way too, because I'm thinking about the conversation we were having right before this podcast started, and I was like, man, is this person always bad at making decisions? And now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe there's something I can learn from that, or what can I learn from that? And it's same thing with like the person that I was like, oh yeah, we both know this person, and they think that you need to be a jerk to get ahead. And it's like, okay, well, maybe there's a lesson that I haven't learned yet, which is why these things are like popping up as like blips on the radar, So it's like, what lessons, why is that there? Why is that happening? What opportunity do I have right now? Is it that, maybe I just need to be like, okay, well, I mean, me and this person have had conversations where I've discussed more like long-term thinking, and I think they called me the Dalai Lama or something like that for thinking like that. And I was
that's
like,
a compliment, man. I'll take that.
I was like, well, I mean, thank you, I guess. But it's like, why are those situations happening? Or is it a recurring situation that it's just coming out in a different way, right? Is it something that keeps happening to you, for you, with different people or in different situations, and you just haven't learned how to work your way through it yet?
I love that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer.
And there's got to be some learnings. Yeah, there is no right or wrong answers. It's just, I believe that we can learn from every human being on Earth something. And I believe, going back to Peter's point, that there's a reason these humans are in my life. I clearly care about them, and it clearly bothers me. So there's got to be, what I'm saying? But if it didn't bother me, I wouldn't care. So I know I care about these people, and I care about the relationship. So what can I contribute to make it better, and what can I learn and listen from them, and maybe figure out where the common ground is? So
yeah.
And just some tough love, I think, that I give only to folks that maybe can handle it, because sometimes I can be a little not crass, but maybe a little too direct.
You give tough love? I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
No, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about, Trevor. You've been on the receiving end of this, I think, quite a bit. But to me, it's like, either do something about it, or just stop talking about it and don't be around them anymore. Right. It's like, like in this situation, it's like, dude, either you don't interact with them anymore or move, or do something about it. And like you said, I mean, there's something for you to learn, but then there's also something for you to contribute. And it's just interesting, man. I think that, everybody's got their truth, and sometimes it's so far afield that you're like, there's no way this person has got to be clinically insane. But there's some, right? but there's something that happened to them in their life, and there's the way they were brought up, and where they were brought up, and their perspective on where they're employed. All these different things have played into this being their truth, and so to be sensitive to that, but at the same time trying to help them maybe question a little bit, see things from other people's perspective, while at the same time trying to see it from theirs.
Completely agree with all of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Simple but not easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you're right. It is, and it is a practice, and it is not easy. But that's why we do. That's why we are who we are, right?
Absolutely. So, I want to be respectful of your guys' time. I really enjoyed this conversation, talking about intention and wherever else, all the other rabbit holes that we went down. But the final question that I would like to ask you guys is, if you had well, I was going to say if you had one message to leave, but if would you like to leave a short message for our listeners and our audience as we sign off today?
I really liked what we talked about today and how we started with intention. And I think everybody, every human being and every organization on this earth has some sort of goodness in them. And we were all put here, and this is getting a little out there, I think we were all put here for a reason. And I think it's super important for fulfillment in life, happiness in life, and learning how to make those choices that better yourself and humanity. And so really ask yourself, what are my God-given talents, and how am I using those talents to better myself and humanity, and really figuring out what we can call it the why, what your purpose, what your mission, your personal mission statement is my only advice would be figure that out sooner than later. Because again, we only get so many spins around the sun. And as soon as you figure that out and figure out how to use those talents and your purpose in life to help yourself, those close to you and those in your communities, I think the changes and the things, humans and opportunities that will manifest it in your life will be so dramatically different. I can't even explain to you how positive your life can become if you just simply live your truth, find out what your truth is, and use it to serve others. So that would be my advice.
There's so many things here, man. I think we did, Tommy, I love what you said, man. And I think that there's so much truth in this conversation. I guess for me, it's going to be back to what we talked about in the beginning, and that's about paying attention. Good friend of mine, unofficial mentor of mine, who's got his kids my age. And I remember him telling me something very early on when we first met. He's like, 2 blinks, and your kids are going to be grown up and out of the house. 2 blinks, they're going to be having a family of their own. He's like, so what feels like a long time now, looking back, is going to be 2 blinks, and it's going to be over. Those kids are going to be out doing their own thing. He goes, so as much as it's hard being a parent, or fill in the blank, as much as it's hard being an entrepreneur or being a spouse or being a friend, that stuff is, before you know it, you're going to be looking back on it fondly in the past, something that happened that is over, a time that you would wish to extend, right? And so parents all talk about how it goes by fast, right? This 2 blinks idea. But in the moment, you feel like, oh, this is just forever, right? Diapers are going to be forever. I'm going to have to wipe my kid's ass forever, right? I'm going to have to feed them forever. Like, all these things are going to happen forever, right? And then all of a sudden it's over, right? You forget. You're like, oh, I don't remember when I started sleeping well. Like, when did that happen? Because all the stuff that you complained about that was such a thorn in your side, it's gone, and you didn't even realize the thorn was removed, right? And so I guess my parting words are just like, you need to pay attention. And part of paying attention is pause to reflect on what's good and what's not, as I talked about, but also pausing for the people that are in your life, and some very, very small things. I mean, not just the people that are close, but people that you interact with, and you can interact with them and not even look up, right? Like, I can go through the cash register, and I get this example all the time. I can go through the checkout counter, right through the cash register. I can check out all of my stuff. I can pay with Apple Pay and never look up. I could never look up at that person, that guy or that gal, right? I couldn't even tell you what they look like. I couldn't tell you if they had glasses, what they wore, nothing, because I didn't pay attention. I gave them no pause whatsoever. Or I can stop, and I do this all the time. My wife always asks me, why do you do that? I'll stop and I'll say, how you doing? And they'll give me a very blanket response. They'll say, oh, good. And they'll maybe say something about the weather, right? But then about 15 seconds later, I say, so how's your day? And my wife's always like, why do you do that? Why do you ask them how they're doing twice? I'm like, no, I didn't. I asked them how they're doing. They gave me their just like, their blanket response. And then I said, how's your day going? And almost always they look up, they look surprised because somebody paused to give them just to show that they give a shit, right? Show that they care. Like, oh, it's good. I had a rough time getting in, and they go into their story of their day, right? And then the secret is actually listening, actually making eye contact, actually showing that you care, right? And so take a pause. Take a pause in your day for these little things. Show people that you care. Show them that they have value. Show the jerk UPS guy that you still value him, even though you feel like you want to just smack him instead, right? just take that pause.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this week's show. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Formula, and big thank you to Peter and Tommy for taking the time to show up on the show today. I know I took a few notes while doing the episode to reflect on later, some things that I need to check myself on. So hopefully you have a few takeaways as well. Now, if you going into this new year, if you feel like that you have any topics or guests that you would like to hear on the show, please feel free to send those suggestions over to trevor@helixacademy.co. That's all for this week's show, and I look forward to you tuning in next week.